What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing game week 2 and let's just be honest right away.
That was fucking dreadful.
So my final point tally was 40, but as you can see, it was pretty poor all around for everybody involved in FPL this week. The average was only 44. So firstly, we're going to go through my team from game week 2, identify what went wrong, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to do to fix this fucking absolute mess of a team. So as you can see, I went for Turner in goal ahead of Onana. In my opinion, Turner had the better fixture. He was playing Sheffield United at home. And say what you want about Forest, but even last season, they had a really solid home record, so I fancied them to keep a clean sheet in this. And to be fair to Matt Turner, the goal he conceded was an absolute wonder goal, so can't really be mad at him there. But yeah, I just didn't really fancy Onana to keep a clean sheet against Spurs after the performance against Wolves. Not his personal performance, more so just the overall team performance. They were very poor against Wolves, so I didn't expect him to have a chance of a clean sheet against Spurs. So yeah, well, the goalkeepers, they both finished on 2 points, so not really much I can do about that. Onana will most likely return to the lineup next week because he's got Forest at home. Moving on to the defence then, so Matty Cash, I kept him in my team after last week. Obviously, first game week, they got battered by Newcastle. So Matty Cash this week had a better fixture against Everton. And Villa just absolutely battered Everton. They pretty much did what Newcastle done to Villa in game week 1. And Matty Cash managed to keep me a clean sheet there as well. I was a little bit disappointed that he didn't get an assist or a goal or anything. Obviously in the first game week he had an XG of 0.74. Obviously the standout player in that defence is Estupiñán. Estupiñán was fantastic again. He's an absolute machine. Obviously we're only 2 game weeks in and he did have 2 easy fixtures. But a goal and 2 assists from a defender, you cannot complain about that whatsoever. Estupiñán's probably going to be a mainstay in my team for the majority of this season. Now let's look at the big letdown in defence, Gabriel. So obviously Gabriel did not start in game week 1 and I wasn't fortunate enough to catch the team league saying that Saliba was going to start ahead of him. I said it in my last video that I fully expected Gabriel to start against Palace because Timber was out injured, so I expected Arteta to move Ben White back into that right back position that he was so familiar with last season, and then that meant that Gabriel would come in the centre back and play where White was playing the week before. But that wasn't the case. Arteta yet again played Partey in that inverted right back role, meaning White and Saliba were the main centre backs and Gabriel missed out. And to be honest, I can't see Arteta changing that anytime soon. It's clear that he wants to dominate possession, and the most effective way he thinks he can do that is by playing Partey in that right back role, playing White and Saliba as centre backs, inverting Partey in the midfield, and then obviously you can just pack out the midfield that way, outnumber the opposition and sustain possession. So Gabriel, 2 games in, has only played 24 minutes. Now Arteta has said that he's going to be more involved and he'll be getting more minutes in the future. But for me personally, I am not willing to have a 5 million defender in my team who is not guaranteed to start every game. I will talk a little bit later about how I'm going to get him out of the team and who I will be bringing in for him. Moving on to the midfield then. So the one thing that I did get right luckily was my captain choice this week. Obviously the majority of players captained Haaland, and I know it was a good amount that captained Saka as well. Haaland and Saka both blanked. So Salah scored from a rebound for a penalty, so he did get -2 points for missing the penalty anyway, but he did score the rebound, so I mean at least he didn't blank. I did get a bit of PTSD with Salah because last year he played Bournemouth at home and Liverpool won 9-0 and he didn't score a single goal, so I was absolutely fuming back then. But luckily this time he did repay us with a goal. And talking about penalties, Arsenal did get a penalty in their game against Crystal Palace and we fully expected Saka to step up and take it as he did all season last season. But for some reason Odegaard decided, you know what, I want to take this one, asked Saka if he could take it, and Saka said yeah sure, no problem. Now I will be clear that the decision of the penalty taker was not made by Arteta. Arteta made that clear in his press conference that it was up to the players. Odegaard did say that Saka gave him the penalty, so I'm hoping that Saka will be staying on penalties in the future, but honestly who knows what's going to happen there. Either way, basically what that tells us is if you're going to have an Arsenal asset, it needs to be Saka or Odegaard. I know obviously a lot of people have Martinelli in their midfield. Martinelli's only had 2 shots in 2 games, and to be honest that might be something to do with Nketiah playing, because when Nketiah plays, the front 3 isn't as interchangeable. If Arsenal played Trossard down the middle, then you would see a lot more from Martinelli because those 2 can interchange, but with Nketiah playing, he pretty much holds his position most of the time in that number 9 role, and it means Martinelli's not getting in the game as much as he can. And then moving on to Marcus Rashford, it was another disappointing performance to be honest, but it wasn't just him individually, it was just a poor team performance again, exactly like the Wolves game. Obviously Ten Hag went with the exact exact same lineup for this game, which I was surprised by. I said in my last video that I fully expected Garnacho to drop down to the bench, and maybe we were going to see Sancho as false 9, or maybe even Martial playing the 9, and Rashford moved out to his preferred left wing role. But that didn't happen. Ten Hag went with Garnacho on the left wing again. Rashford played down the middle, and it's clear that Rashford just isn't suited to play down the middle. I think he can play there in bigger games when he's playing on the counter attack and he has more space to run into. But yeah, he clearly prefers playing off the left. So I do think that the next game he has against Forest, you will see him move to the left. I can't see Ten Hag starting the same team 3 games in a row when that team has been very, very poor. Obviously, Mount is out injured now, so Eriksen will come back in, and I do think we're probably going to see Sancho or Martial come into the team and then Rashford go out to the left. I also read that Højlund is going to be in the squad for this game. I don't think he'll start, but it's good news to see that he's going to be in the squad. We might even see Højlund get like 30 minutes or something, so either way there is going to be a stage in that game where Rashford is on the left-hand side. So if you are a Rashford owner, I wouldn't panic too much at the moment, because obviously we haven't seen the best of him yet. I would maybe hold on to him for 1 or 2 more game weeks and see if he can turn it around. And then the last midfielder I have to cover is McAllister, and I'm not going to lie, I feel really, really hard done by with this. Obviously McAllister gets sent off against Bournemouth. It was never a red card in a million years. I don't know how he got sent off, to be honest. Now obviously when you get a straight red you have to serve a 3-game suspension, but Liverpool did appeal that and they actually won the appeal. So that literally is the referee saying, we got the decision wrong, so you don't have to serve the suspension. Now obviously I'm a little bit biased because he was in my team, but I personally think that if a red card gets overturned, FPL should probably be giving us those points back, because I literally got -2 for a red card that wasn't a red card, and the referees have literally confirmed that it wasn't a red card now. So yeah, I feel very, very hard done by there. But moving on from that, McAllister will be available for the next game week against Newcastle. And then quickly moving on to the forward line. So obviously we had Watkins, Haaland, João Pedro. So Watkins got me an assist against Everton in a 4-0 win. I'm not going to lie, I am disappointed that he didn't get on the score sheet. Also, the assist was for winning a penalty, and he didn't take the penalty. He was taking penalties pretty much all season last season. I don't think he had a great penalty record, to be honest. So Douglas Luiz has been taking the penalties. And at the time of this recording, Villa have just finished playing a Europa Conference League qualifier against Hibs, and Douglas Luiz took another penalty. So it looks like Douglas Luiz is the confirmed penalty taker for Villa now, and Watkins is off the penalty. So that's a big miss. But also in that game against Hibs, he did score a hat-trick. Now, I understand it isn't Premier League opposition, so you can't really take too much from it. But he did score a hat-trick, so, you know, there's no harm for the confidence there. And then moving on to Haaland, obviously I didn't captain him this week, and thankfully I didn't, because he blanked against Newcastle. But saying that, he probably should have scored a couple of goals. The standout player for Man City was Phil Foden, and we'll talk about Phil Foden a little bit more. But yeah, Foden created several chances for Haaland, and he just didn't put them away. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. He's got Sheffield United at home next, so we fully expect him to bounce back there, and he'll probably be scoring 2-3 goals again. And then last but not least, we've got João Pedro. So João Pedro actually had a really strong performance in game week 1 against Luton. He did score a penalty in that game as well. But the thing about Brighton is they've got so many options going forward in their attack that I did expect João Pedro to be dropped at some point, and it's a shame because there isn't really any other players as good as him in his price range. So yes, sadly, although we all wanted João Pedro to be a consistent starter for Brighton, that does not look like it's going to be the case. I believe that De Zerbi was saying some things about João Pedro in his press conference as well, basically saying that João Pedro needs to improve his defensive work rate and stuff, so it doesn't really sound promising that João Pedro is going to be starting a lot of the games coming up. And obviously Enciso was the guy who got the nod ahead of João Pedro against Wolves, and he got 2 assists, so it's not looking likely like João Pedro is going to be nailed on the start for Brighton, and he probably will be moved out of my team either this game week or the following game week, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, obviously it was a very poor week, but not just for me, for everybody. Now the good thing is that it's still really early in the season, and these first few game weeks should be used just to collect as much information as you possibly can, and I got a lot of good information from that game week. So 2 big things that I've learned from that game week myself is I need to get rid of Gabriel, because Gabriel is a minutes risk. He's not going to be starting a lot of games for Arsenal. And then the other thing is João Pedro is the same. He's obviously a minutes risk too. He's probably not going to start every game for Brighton. He's going to be coming off the bench a lot, so he's also a minutes risk. So let's move on to the transfers and what we're going to do to address these issues that we have. So the first thing you're going to notice is Gabriel has already dropped in price from 5 million to 4.9 million, and João Pedro obviously went up to 5.6 million last game week. he's already dropped back down to 5.5 million. So for anybody who watched my game week review last week, you would have heard me talk about my long-term transfer plans, and the two players I had in mind specifically were Chilwell in and Jackson in, because obviously Chelsea have really, really good fixtures coming up. So in an ideal world, I would be able to just take Gabriel out, put Chilwell in, take João Pedro out, and put Jackson in. The issue for me is that I have no money in the bank, because obviously I've got Salah, so I don't have like that template team of like 8.5 million Bruno Fernandes, where I have a few million in the bank and then I can afford to go from João Pedro to Jackson. So I had to be a little bit more creative with my team. So we're going to be taking Gabriel out. We'll do this right now. So Gabriel, I'm going to get 4.9 million back for him. Now, if I was to just go ahead and put Chilwell in, you'll notice that Chilwell is already up to 5.7 million. So right away, I'm 0.8 million in the negative. So I can't upgrade João Pedro to Jackson because I don't have the money to do it. So the only way that I can get Jackson into this team for the Chelsea fixtures coming up is by removing Watkins. But the thing about Watkins is he has Burnley away next, and that's a really good fixture. So ideally, I didn't really want to take him out for that fixture. And like I mentioned as well, Watkins just scored a hat-trick against Hibs. Again, obviously I understand Hibs isn't that great, but it can do no harm to confidence scoring a hat-trick against anybody. He'll be coming into that game against Burnley bouncing. But I have to think about my long-term plans here, and the only way that I can get Jackson into this team for his better long-term fixtures is by taking Watkins out. So one of these changes I'm going to be making is going to be Watkins out and Jackson in, just like that. So as you can see, that leaves me with 0.2 million in the bank. So I could just hit confirming those transfers, think to myself, happy days, I'm sorted for game week 3, I don't have to think about it anymore. But that's not what we're going to do, because we like to make things complicated as fuck for ourselves. So like I was just saying a couple minutes ago, these first few game weeks are all about gathering as much information as possible, okay? So what I've realized in the first couple of game weeks is the 6.5 midfield market, those midfielders are delivering way more points than even the premium midfielders. And I don't have any of them. That's my issue. I don't have Mbeumo, I don't have Matoma, I don't have March, I don't have any of them. So if I was to go ahead and click confirm on the Chilwell transfer and the Jackson transfer, and the only way that I can get a 6.5 midfielder in is by taking Saka out, Salah out, or Rashford out. And as I said last week, these three players were nailed on 100%, had to be in my team at the start of the season, and that hasn't changed for now. So what that tells me is that I am priced out of the Chilwell move. I cannot afford Chilwell, and that makes me very sad, but that is just the reality of my situation. I can't afford Chilwell. I have to look for alternatives. Now I've got 3 players in mind that I'm going to show you that are budget alternatives to Chilwell, okay? So the first player I have in mind is Lewis Hall. Now I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to bring Lewis Hall in right now, but he's a player I'm going to be keeping an eye on 100%. Obviously, Dan Burton is like the nailed on left back for Newcastle right now, and he does a very solid job. But with Eddie Howe, he wants to make Newcastle into a progressive football team. And long term, I 100% believe that Lewis Hall will be the starting left back for Newcastle. Dan Burton's like 31 now. Lewis Hall is so good at attacking. He was one of the bright sparks for Chelsea's extremely poor season last season. So I will be keeping an eye on Lewis Hall, and if he does manage to break into the team within the next couple of game weeks, he has some really good fixtures coming up, sort of 24th of September and forward. But I won't be bringing him into my team right now. He's just a player I'm keeping an eye on. The second player that I had in mind, Malo Gusto. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but we're going to say Malo Gusto anyway. So Gusto is the alternative right back for Chelsea, and he's going to be playing the next few game weeks while James is out injured. So he's a really good short-term option. He's only 4 million. Obviously, we've spoke about the Chelsea fixtures and how good they are. The only concern with Gusto is that Reece James is expected back for this Bournemouth game on Sunday the 17th of September. Now, I don't think he'll be rushed back for that fixture, but we're more than likely going to see James back for maybe Villa or Fulham. So Gusto is a really short-term option. Again, he has really good fixtures, but I don't really want to fix the issues I have right now with a short-term transfer, because as you can see, there's already so much I need to fix with my team already. So I don't want to make a transfer now where I'm going to have to be making another transfer to fix this current transfer in a couple of weeks. So that brings me to the last option and the player that I'm probably going to be bringing in right now. And that player is Udogie. I'm probably butchering some of these pronunciations right now, but we're going to go with Udogie. He is Spurs starting left back right now. And as you can see, he has Bournemouth, Burnley and Sheffield United in his next 3 games. He does have Arsenal and Liverpool coming up in game week 6 and 7. As you can see, I have Kabore on my bench, and in game week 6 and 7 he has Wolves and Everton, so I could potentially give him a go in those games. But for Udogie, like I say, he has 3 really good fixtures coming up, and he's pretty much nailed the start for Spurs at the moment. And he doesn't cost 5.7 million like Chilwell. He's in my budget. If I bring him in, I have 1.4 million in the bank. And then that means that next game week, I can look at maybe moving McAllister out and bringing the likes of Mbeumo in. I can maybe even move Garnacho out and upgrade him a little bit. So that's the 2 transfers I'm making this game week. It's going to be Gabriel out, Udogie in, Watkins out, Jackson in. I will have to stick with João Pedro on my team for this game week, but that's only because I have to get Watkins out first to free up money to then get Pedro out as well. A couple of things I just want to touch on for you guys as well. This is irrelevant to my team, but it's a couple of dilemmas I've seen going around social media right now. So as you can see right now, this is a list of the most transferred out players this game week, okay? So Bruno Fernandes and Rashford are both on this list, pretty high up this list as well. Now, if you own Bruno Fernandes and Rashford and you want to get rid of one of them, you're probably going to want to get rid of Rashford ahead of Bruno Fernandes. I'm personally not getting rid of Rashford myself, but the reason I say that is because if you look at Rashford's numbers here, he has pretty low expected goals, pretty low expected assists as well. He hasn't really been involved in much at all. Again, that's because he's playing in that number 9 position where he's limited, whereas obviously if he plays out in the left, that'll change. But if you look at Bruno Fernandes' numbers, his underlying stats are actually very, very good. In that Spurs game, he had an expected goal involvement of 1.18. Wolves, he had 0.76. So he actually has the highest expected goal involvement in the league, bar Mbeumo, and Mbuemo's obviously had 2 penalties in 2 games. So if you've got Bruno Fernandes, I wouldn't really panic sell him right now. I would keep hold of him. But you're probably wondering why these 2 players are being transferred out. And the reason for that is this guy, Phil Foden. So like I mentioned earlier, Phil Foden had a really, really strong performance against Newcastle. He came away with 3 bonus points and obviously assisted Alvarez's goal as well. So Phil Foden was 7.5 million. He's 7.6 million now. So people are dropping Rashford or Bruno Fernandes. Rashford's obviously 9 million. Bruno Fernandes is 8.5 million. And people are dropping one of them out for Phil Foden because if you look at Phil Foden's fixtures, he's got Sheffield United, Fulham, West Ham, Forest, Wolves. He's got really, really good fixtures coming up. So he's someone that I'm keeping an eye on as well. He's a really, really good option. I'm probably not going to bring him in because I've got my own issues I need to deal with first. And also, I still have worries about Pep Roulette. I don't want to bring Foden in and then he's on the bench and Bernardo Silva's starting ahead of him or whatever the case may be. But Foden's definitely one to keep an eye on. And if you are going to bring him in and take one of those United midfielders out, probably is going to be Rashford instead of Bruno Fernandes because like I say, Bruno Fernandes' underlying numbers are much better than Rashford's. But if you've got that really template midfield of like double Arsenal, double United, so you've got Martinelli, Saka, Rashford, Bruno, honestly, if you're wanting to bring Phil Foden in, the player I would get rid of out of all those players is Martinelli because like I said before, he's only had 2 shots in 2 games, so he's been very, very poor. And obviously, like I mentioned earlier as well, in Nketiah, when he plays in that number 9 role, it means Martinelli can't really interchange with him, so he's pretty much playing as like a traditional left winger where he's just up and down, tracking back, working hard. Now, don't get me wrong, Martinelli's still explosive and he could just explode into life and start scoring goals galore. But in my personal opinion, if you're wanting to bring Phil Foden in, if you think Phil Foden's an absolute must, you're obviously going to have to sacrifice one of those 4 players I mentioned. And I think Martinelli is probably going to be the player you want to get rid of if you're wanting to bring Phil Foden in. So just quickly moving back to my team to finish up this video. This is going to be the team I'm playing for game week 3. It's going to be Onana in goal against Forest. He has a pretty good chance of keeping a clean sheet there. Matty Cash is going to be away at Burnley. So again, I do expect hopefully a clean sheet there or maybe some attacking returns. Udogie's got Bournemouth away, so same applies to him. Estupiñán obviously has West Ham at home, so hopefully he can get on the score sheet again or get an assist, or obviously a clean sheet would be nice as well. Saka is going to be at home to Fulham, and Fulham have been conceding a lot of chances this season so far, so hopefully we'll get some Saka returns then. I do have Salah and McAllister in my midfield for their trip to Newcastle, and I'm not really a fan of having to do that, but I don't really have a choice at the moment because the only other option I have is to bring João Pedro in, and he's not nailed on the start. He might come off the bench and score, and I'll be really annoyed that I started McAllister, but I don't really want to take the risk on a player who's not guaranteed to start. Now, the thing about McAllister is since Liverpool have actually signed a defensive midfielder now in Endo, I'm hoping that he can actually push up the pitch a little bit more, and there's also a chance that he could potentially be moved on the penalties because he's by far Liverpool's best penalty taker. Obviously, Salah's Liverpool's main man, so it wouldn't surprise me if he stayed on penalties, but this last couple of years, he's actually had a really really poor penalty record. So it would not surprise me if Klopp said, look, McAllister's taking penalties now because he's so much better at penalties than Salah. So I will be keeping an eye on that. Now, I might sound hypocritical here because I was just talking about João Pedro not being guaranteed to start. I've got Garnacho on. He's probably not guaranteed to start as well. But he's probably got a better fixture, Forest at home. And I can see him maybe getting like 30, 40 minutes off the bench at the end of the game. And he's better as an impact sub, in my opinion. He's been very poor the first 2 games when he started. But in my opinion, he's better as an impact sub. So you never know, he might come on, score, assist or whatever. There's a couple of hits I'm having to take this game week because obviously I had other priorities and needed to sort with those 2 transfers that I rolled over first. And then in the long term, I'm going to look at moving Garnacho out, moving João Pedro out, and obviously fixing the issues that I have right now. So yes, for the short term, there is a couple of hits I'm taking, but I am hoping to see Rashford moved out to the left for this game, even if it means Garnacho is dropped to the bench. And then obviously we'll have like Martial or Højlund or Sancho playing in the 9. And then obviously the 2 striker options. This is pretty much what I'm putting all my hope on for this game week. Haaland has Sheffield United away. Obviously you could maybe consider Jackson for the armband, but in my opinion, Haaland has to be 100% your captain this week. I don't think this is a game week you should be really taking much chances in captaincy. And Sheffield United for City is a very, very good fixture. So Haaland gets the captain's armband, and then Jackson at home to Luton will be my second strike option. So I'm recording this video on Wednesday the 23rd, and it'll most likely be uploaded on Thursday the 24th. So I might change my mind about a couple of these decisions. I might bring João Pedro in for Garnacho because João Pedro might get a start again. I'm not 100% nailed on if I'm going to start Garnacho or João Pedro, but either way I'm going to have to start one of them for this game week until I can move them out, and most likely they're both going to be starting on the bench. So I haven't made my mind up which of those players is going to be on my bench. Hey guys, so just a quick update. After I finished recording that video, I had a look at Twitter, and Fabrizio Romano actually tweeted that Enciso has suffered a knee injury. So that more than likely means that João Pedro is going to start for Brighton. I do understand why people like to sell early in the week because obviously you want to avoid prices going up or prices going down. But this is exactly why it's beneficial to wait towards later in the week to make your transfers, because obviously there was potential I was going to transfer João Pedro out this week, and now he looks set to start with the Enciso injury. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on news, injury news, all that kind of stuff, and make your transfers later in the week to avoid anything like this happening to yourself. And RIP to the people who transferred João Pedro out already. So on that note, if you do want to stay up to date with my team, the changes I make, and also you just want some FPL tips and stuff like that, make sure to join the Discord below in the description. We have a super active football community in that Discord, and we're also talking about FPL quite a lot as well. So make sure to join the Discord and also give me a follow on all the rest of the socials in the description as well. But until next time, this has been your Game Week 2 review / Game Week 3 plans, and I'll see you next week for the Game Week 3 review. Peace.